Hi guys, we're talking syntax, which is how you build sentences. So, picking up from where we left off, the first subsystem we looked at was phonology, which is all of the sounds, and then we use the sounds to make words, and that was the topic of morphology and lexicology. And then you take all of these words and you string them together and you make full sentences. And so how you build sentences is the topic of syntax. Now, the first thing we're going to look at in syntax is actually something that we touched on in lexicology. This is actually not about syntax, but it's something that will make syntax a bit easier to understand, which is that all of your sentences kind of have a verb at the core of them, and any given verb can exist in lots of different forms. So you've got a verb like to eat, and then you might have forms like I eat, but then he eats with an S on it, or I ate, talking past tense. Or you might have sentences that say things like we have eaten something already, or you are eating, or I like to eat eggs for breakfast. So the verb to eat, there's lots of different ways that you'll see eat in a sentence, like depending what grammatical job it's doing. Maybe you'd even see a sentence like this: having already eaten breakfast, I got dressed for school. So you're using the verb eat in different ways, and in these different ways, you've got different forms of it. Okay, so all of these forms that you are using, you can divide them up into two categories. Some of these forms are finite, which means they are showing who is doing it and when. So it's actually got a particular point of time that it's existing. And some of the other forms, though, are non-finite, which means they're not specifically saying when they're happening, and they need some other verb, some auxiliary verb, to complete them in a sentence. So when we look at finite and non-finite verb forms, basically, like I said, a finite verb form will show in some way who's doing it or when it's being done, whereas a non-finite verb form doesn't. At least not on its own. It needs other verbs there to complete the sentence. So your finite verb forms basically come in two flavors. You've got Joe eats an apple, which is simple present, and Joe ate an apple, which would be simple past. So those are the two forms of the two finite verb forms that you'll need to be looking for. The non-finite forms are all the other ones, like Joe wants to eat an apple. That's called the infinitive, like the basic form of the verb, usually with a to in front of it, like to eat, to be, to drink, to run, to walk. That's called the infinitive. It's kind of the general basic form of the verb. You might have Joe is eating an apple, which we use to make present progressive. That form is called the present participle. The ing form, like eating or dancing or singing, also does another job, which is something like this. Joe likes eating apples. That's a form called the gerund, which is basically you use the ing form, which is the same as the present participle, but you're using it as if it were kind of a noun, because you're saying you like eating apples. You're saying that eating apples is a thing that you like. So whenever you use an ing form of a verb as if it were a noun, that's called a gerund. The last form is called the past participle, and for some verbs, this looks exactly the same as the simple past, but a lot of verbs, they're different, and in context, it will usually have in front of it or something like that to make a sentence like, Joe has eaten the apple. So that form's called the past participle. Now, some of these can do other jobs as well, like the present participle sometimes is used as an adjective, like in a sentence, my brother is annoying me. That is clearly a present participle, but then you can also just say, my brother is annoying, and then basically using it as an adjective describing how annoying he is. And the past participle can also be used as an adjective too sometimes. Like you might say, I have crumpled up the paper, and then you can say, look at that crumpled piece of paper. So some of these have a lot of extra uses. The thing that you'll notice with the non-finite verb forms is that you've still got some other verb there helping them complete the sentence. So the other verb, which is usually an auxiliary verb helping you to make a full tense form of something, or maybe a catenative verb like wants or likes that you can put in front of it. It will need some other verb there that is a finite one to complete the sentence. So like Joe wants to eat an apple. Wants is finite. That's present tense, I want. But to eat is infinitive, so that's non-finite. And then Joe is eating an apple. The is the finite verb there. And then Joe likes eating apples. Likes is, again, that's a finite verb. And Joe has eaten the apple. The has is the finite verb there. This is going to matter later on, because to find a sentence or a clause, you're going to be looking for a finite verb, because every sentence or clause will pretty much have to have one. Okay, let's look at some sentence examples. Singing is his pastime. Look at that. The finite verb is the one telling you present or past tense. So that's is. And then there is a non-finite verb form there, which is singing, which is a gerund saying that he likes singing, or singing, the activity, is his pastime. Or something like this. I like to read. The finite verb is like, present tense, I like it. To read is an infinitive, non-finite one. It's easy to find fault with others. So again, you've got the finite is and a non-finite to find. So same thing with these other sentences. You can stop and have a think about each one if you pause the video and work out so exactly what form is happening in each of these other examples. That last one's kind of tricky because crumpled, arguably, it's being used as an adjective there. It's the past participle of the verb to crumple something, but here I'm talking about a crumpled letter.